Everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Cross-Chain Insider, a weekly roundup of all news traveling across chains, brought to you by LI.FI. I'm Mark, a member of the biz dev team and a metaverse believer here at LI.FI. My Gigabrain co-host and Substack ore is Arjun. What is up, Arjun?
Hey, we finally moved to Substack this week. I'm pretty sure that some of the team members are quite happy. So.
The Cross-Chain Insider has grown up. So, by the way, this podcast is the audio version and visual version of just Arjun's regular newsletter, which you can now sign up for on LI.FI's Substack, which will come to you via email. So all of this great news, this roundup will hit your inbox every Monday if you go sign up. So you should definitely go sign up. But without further ado, Arjun, can you give me the rundown, recap, roundup, whatever you want to call it, of the bridging news of the last 7 days?
Yeah, for sure. Let's start with one that hits close to home. So LI.FI expands support to Harmony. So we have now added cross-chain transfers to and from the Harmony blockchain. So users can access our stack of integrated bridges, DEXs and DEX aggregators to bridge to Harmony and explore the ecosystem. And there is also a great deep dive into the Harmony ecosystem here, which is written by you. And it talks about some of the most popular applications on the blockchain. And more importantly, it focuses on some of the applications that are native to the Harmony blockchain, which means like in order to try them out, you have to bridge to Harmony. And now you can do that with LI.FI. Moving on to more connectivity in the DeFi ecosystem. So Bridge Network has integrated Arbitrum. So Bridge Network is a token and NFT bridge protocol, and it has now integrated with Arbitrum. This means users can conduct native asset transfers and cross-chain NFT transfers between Arbitrum and other chains using Bridge Network. Up next, we have Wormhole that had a very eventful week, to say the least. First, I would want to talk about the 10 million bug bounty on Immunify. So on on 24th, like last week, a white hat who goes by the pseudonym of Satya OX disclosed a critical bug in the Wormhole core bridge contract on Ethereum, and he received a $10 million payout for doing so. I think this bug bounty went live on 24th of Feb, and it was one of the biggest bug bounties to ever exist on Immunify. So the bug was an upgradable proxy implementation, self-destruct bug. It's quite technical. There's an entire blog by the Immunify team that talks about what happened and like the steps taken by the team, etc. And this helped prevent like a potential lockup of user funds on Wormhole. So the good thing is that the bug was quickly patched and no user funds were affected. So I think it's great to see that a bug bounty program actually worked. Actually, it's both good and bad. It's good to see that it worked, but it's bad that there was such a critical bug in Wormhole's smart contract. But I guess like all is well that ends well, right? So no funds were affected. Wormhole fixed the bug, and the white hat rightfully was paid 10 million for finding this bug. However, like this again, I think it's a big reminder to all the teams to take security very seriously. And I think all these bug bounty programs, they help in the sense that there are more eyes on your smart contracts, and there are more people kind of doing a third-party audit other than the funds that you've actually paid for it. So yeah, in the second news, there was Wormhole expanded to Algorand. So this is Wormhole's 10th integration to a layer 1 blockchain. So that just shows how well connected Wormhole is and how important it is to the ecosystem, right? So it just puts more emphasis on why the bug bounty was so important. And yeah, so Wormhole has now added support for Algorand. Then we have Bartek and the proposed risk framework for bridges on L2Bits. So he posted a summary of the upcoming bridges risk framework planned for L2Bit, the platform. And this framework like classifies different bridges as native bridges, consensus light clients, optimistic bridges, validator bridges, and hybrid. So these are all different types of bridge classification that I think we've also talked about multiple times. And it definitely looks very interesting to see how this framework would be built. And like personally, I hope I just get to contribute to it. Let's see how that works out.
Yeah, so I just want to hop in here real quick and ask you a question because I've heard this framing before, but I don't think very many people have heard it. And this is something they talk about in this thread, is that a roll up can be seen as a bridge. Can you kind of discuss that idea just like real quick, 30 seconds for the people out there?
I mean, it's just that. So, what is a bridge, right? So it's like just taking funds from one ecosystem to another. So rollups, they have their native bridges. They have all the technology there to basically take funds from Ethereum L1 to L2s. So that's why they've kind of discussed the idea of rollups as a bridge, but they've also called them native bridges because they're very focused on bootstrapping liquidity on their ecosystem basically.
Beautiful. Sorry, I just wanted to hop in. I really enjoyed that they added that to the framework because you don't see that very often.
Yeah, so it's anything that's not discussed very often, it always just pops out these days, right? Because everything kind of seems like, okay, someone had written it, someone then just read it, and he was like, I'll add my own spin to it. But then the language is kind of same. So this is a new idea. This is always good to see. And yeah, to wrap things up, Connext, they hit the $1 billion milestone in total bridged volume. And it's great to see that one of the safest bridges out there, one that is definitely on the right side or the trust minimized side of the trust spectrum, has safely now moved $1 billion in volume across 17 chains. And that's it for the bridge updates this week.
Perfect. So the next section of the newsletter, which the first section I'll show you here, we go through bridge updates. We move to the multi-chain ecosystem. Let's see if I can find the correct tab. Okay, I found it. This is pretty good. So the first update here is that Polygon Nightfall, which is a ZK rollup blockchain, went live a few days ago. And first of all, Nightfall is one of the best names out there. I think that's going to be sticky. I'm very bullish on anything called Nightfall. Second of all, this is really cool because first you get to see ZK technology, zero knowledge technology used at like scale for the first time. Second of all, one of the biggest use cases, like if you go back and read, blockchain articles back in 2017, 2018, 2019, supply chain was always one of the first use cases people talk about blockchains being used for, but we haven't really seen that on a large scale because we've been, busy doing DeFi and, payments and stuff like that. Anyways, the first kind of project to launch on Polygon Nightfall is an EY, Ernst & Young project that is going to be tracking supply chain stuff via NFTs. So this is really cool. Polygon is really building out some cool technology. I'm impressed by Nightfall. Moving along, we have the Terra ecosystem revival plan. I'll keep this short and sweet, just because we could stay talking about Terra all day. But Terra founder Do Kwon has proposed a revival plan that suggests forking Terra and having the original chain stay as Terra Classic and the new chain be the new Terra with airdrops to all token holders at the time. You look like you have something to add there, Arjun.
No, I just have a question. Will users who held Luna in a centralized exchange get the airdrop or not? Asking for a friend, of course.
Asking for a friend. So actually, I meant to actually link to the proposal. They bring this up in the proposal. Okay. So this is very, very interesting, right? There's native Terra, there's native UST and Luna on the Terra ecosystem, right? But because of all these cross-chain bridges and these centralized exchanges, a lot of people aren't holding these assets on chain. Okay. And so the disclaimer at the very top of this article, I'm so glad you asked this question. Please be aware that due to technical constraints, it is not possible to include all UST and Luna holdings. on Terra and other chains in the snapshots mentioned. Okay, so assets that may not be included in the new Terra airdrop essentially is any US Terra Luna bridged off Terra, users with bridged US Terra Luna. So like I personally had some wrapped
Yeah.
Luna. I'm not in the airdrop, right? That's tough. UST, like, so this is really, 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 really interesting. We're not going to dive too deep into it. But all this to say, Terra seems like they have a plan to fork. We'll see. We know that in the past, there's precedent for this with Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. It's all up in the air right now. This is under vote right now. Moving on, here we have Coinbase doing something major for the crypto ecosystem at large. You can now use Dapps inside the Coinbase wallet, and you don't have to have self-custody. So essentially, you can do any DeFi interaction through just your basic KYC'd Coinbase account. So like for Arjun and I, we're degenerates. We spend all of our time on chain. This is kind of like, meh, I don't really want to do DeFi through my Coinbase address. But if we're talking about just like the normal user, we're talking about, my dad. This is going to be great. This is going to be the first time he's going to be able to like deposit assets into Compound. Do you have anything to
I think
add?
this is a semi self custody. So there are like two seats, one with Coinbase and the other one with the user, of course. So I think the story behind why this was introduced is very interesting because the main customer support query that they always got, the Coinbase team always got, was I lost my seed phrase. Can you help me recover it? So this is the rationale behind building a wallet that has like two seed phrases, one with the team and the other with the user. So even if one loses it, the other can still help him out. But that being said, like if Coinbase like wraps up operations, the user is still left with nothing.
So I think this could be a major step for DeFi adoption. However, I still want people to learn how to properly self-custody their assets and interact with dApps on chain without having to use a centralized third party. But this is a good
Like
happy medium.
I'm not really sure like what Coinbase's user base is like. So let's say if a regular user who's just taking exposure to crypto by holding some Bitcoin on Coinbase, I don't think he cares about making the most out of DeFi, right? But it's good to have that option that if they feel that they're ready to take the next step, this is there, right? This is in the middle of everything. So this is a bridge kind of a thing for DeFi.
Yep. And so interestingly, you bring up like how many people are actually using DeFi. I think it's a really tiny number because funny enough, today a stat came out that 12% of Americans have bought crypto essentially. I would love to see the stats on how many Americans have like moved it to a self-custodied wallet. I bet it's less than 2%.
I mean, then the next step, right? Like after moving it to a self-custody wallet, how many have actually used applications? So the number keeps getting smaller. But I think this is very important for the future. Maybe right now it's less, especially with the reduced activity in these conditions. But yeah, I think 2 or 3 years down the line, this will be like, okay, if you want to use DeFi, just use Coinbase and then go through that.
Yep. And just one other thing I'll add on this. LI.FI is all about the cross-chain space. Coinbase offering easy ways to use dApps is going to be good for the cross-chain space because a new user is going to be able to go deposit USDC on Solana and Ethereum at some point, and they're not even going to really notice what they're doing. They're just going to see their USDC in their wallet and they're going to see the APY and click a button. Which, like in the grand scheme of things, again, we don't love centralized solutions, but we do love seeing innovation in the cross-chain space. So I think it's going to be net bullish for the crypto space, even if it is maybe a step back from the degenerates who want everything to be on chain. Now, we've talked about this section for way too long, so I'll move on. So DeFi Llama came out with another beautiful chart here, which I thought I had linked, but it's not open. But it essentially tracks stablecoin values across 53 different chains. And so you can check this out. Yep, so it's $154 billion worth of stablecoins are out there. This chart's a little bit old, so it might be around 150 billion right now. As you can see, there's no UST anymore. $18 billion wiped out in 2 weeks.
So even in the chart, I think UST was shown earlier, and then I think the green line is UST. So it was growing, but then if you see it towards the end, there's that line, right? That's the end of UST.
Brutal. You also see some outflows in Tether over the last couple of days. There's been some discussions about Tether and liquidity, which way over my head. But you have seen outflows there. Next section here, speaking of wallets, Robinhood, the kind of home of all meme stock traders, is now they're now launching a Web3 wallet. And I believe, based on a couple articles I've read, is they're planning to do no gas fees for the Web3 wallet. So you're going to be able to withdraw with no gas fees. We'll see if they stick to that. Could be a good way to get people hooked on moving self-custody. We'll find out. I'm personally on the wait list because I want to try it out, but I have not checked it out yet. Next, we have introducing Optimism Bedrock. So it is essentially a new iteration of Optimism's code, which is moving it from Optimism being built as Optimism and Optimism being built as something that is almost equivalent to that of Ethereum. So this new code change is shifting their code base to be as equivalent to Ethereum as you can be, while still keeping the rollup features, which is, high throughput, cheap gas costs, and using Ethereum as settlement. If you, I'll scroll down here. I think they have a number. Can't quite find it here. Yes, so Optimism nodes will sync 50 times faster with Bedrock. That's pretty substantial change. We have one more little tidbit here in the cross-chain space. It's another reason to be optimistic. Binance has integrated layer 2 deposits for Ethereum on Optimism. Withdrawals will be coming soon once they have enough liquidity. And so that's just another, talking about the cross-chain space, Binance offering direct deposits to an L2. It's just another great way to incentivize people to go test things out and to not have to pay those crazy gas fees on Ethereum. Though
they're not crazy anymore.
Yeah, I was about to say,
right now they're not crazy.
In the bear market, they're actually pretty mild. Anyways, we'll move on to the next section of the podcast, where Arjun is our research or thread or I guess he's a Substack or now. So Arjun, you wrote a little bit this week in the What's Poppin' section about OpenSea. What's poppin' with OpenSea?
Yeah, so this week, the news that really caught my attention was the launch of Seaport by OpenSea. So let's start with the basics, right? So what is Seaport? So Seaport is a brand new Web3 marketplace protocol for safely and efficiently buying and selling NFTs. So the keyword here is that it's a protocol that allows buying and selling of NFTs, and not just by listing in return for crypto assets like ETH or so, but it enables like different customizations for the offers. So users can list their NFT for any combination of ERC20, ERC1155, or ERC721. So similarly, offerers can agree to supply a number of these items. So that's great additional like flexibility added to the buying and selling of NFTs. And because it's a protocol which has like the core smart contract, which is open source and decentralized, any builder, creator, and collector can build on Seaport. So what's interesting here is that Seaport brings that much needed functionality and flexibility to NFTs, because creators can now have more control over how to configure a sale. And the fact that it's a protocol which allows everyone to build on it. And with this additional functionality and flexibility, many people are comparing the launch of Seaport to the launch of Uniswap V2 in 2018. So people think that this could do the same thing for NFTs, what V2 did for DeFi, leading to the DeFi summer in 2020. So to give an example of how NFT sales would change with Seaport, a normal listing earlier looked like, okay, I'll sell one Bored Ape for X amount of ETH. But with Seaport, this could look like anything basically. So you can sell one Bored Ape, but for X ETH, or like for 5 Azukis, or 10,000 sushi tokens, or some ETH, but and some Azukis, right? So it offers a great flexibility. And I think this is great for the NFT space. And what got me thinking was if we can unlock cross-chain NFT swaps with Seaport, and how this can really benefit users and creators, right? So currently Seaport only supports Ethereum NFTs, but even in the NFT space, there's a shift towards a multi-chain future. Like OpenSea keeps tweeting the future is multi-chain, and they also added support for Solana NFTs. So the point here is that in the future, we can expect cross-chain NFT swaps as well, like selling an Ethereum NFT for a Solana NFT. And this would be a significant addition to the cross-chain NFT landscape. This is because the ability to do cross-chain swaps can have similar impacts on NFTs as it did for DeFi, right? It would lead to increased liquidity and capital efficiency across the entire ecosystem of NFTs. And that's something that's really exciting for me and has been the topic of discussion as well on crypto Twitter last week.
Yeah, I'll just add, as someone that reads a lot about the cross-chain space, I feel like the elephant in the room is the fact that I can't use my Bitcoin to easily buy an NFT on Ethereum, right? Like on OpenSea. Like that is the fact that I can't do that right now. It's 2022. I'm sure there's a way to do it if I, go wrap it and then I go trade it for ETH, and then I have to go do all this manual labor if I want to trade my Bitcoin for. I guess I could use Thorchain probably is what I'd do, right? I'd swap that for native ETH, and then I'd go buy an NFT with ETH. The one-click checkout with NFTs with any currency is what needs to be the future, and so I think Seaport's like a tiny step towards that. I think the bigger thing with Seaport is the bartering and being able to swap NFTs for NFTs. That's great, but one-click checkout for NFTs with any crypto is like my biggest dream for the cross-chain space, because I think that'll make everything explode.
One-click checkout can be done, but to do that with native assets is the major problem, right? Because everything is not interconnected as we would like it to be.
I know. I'm just talking about what I want to happen. I'm not saying what is happening. Anyways, we'll move on. Arjun, this is the second to last portion of the podcast. I'm sad. We're moving through it fast today. What are a few basic content recommendations that you have for the people out there?
So a few that got my attention were the Wormhole explainers, basically. So the team was very active last week explaining people about some of the key aspects of their architecture. The first one was about X assets. So this is basically a wrapped asset that represents the value of the original asset on a different platform. And they talk about how double and triple wrapping of assets can be problematic for the entire ecosystem. So,
wait, can you hold up? What do you mean by double or triple wrapping an asset for those who don't spend their days reading white papers?
So it's like basically wrapping Ethereum, like Wormhole wraps Ethereum, and then some other bridge wraps Wormhole's wrapped Ethereum.
Yeah, so you've wrapped Ethereum.
Yeah.
Once you move that wrapped Ethereum to another chain.
Yep.
Okay.
So then they basically talk about how Portal, a token and NFT bridge, which is built on top of Wormhole's generic message passing protocol, allows for X assets to move freely across chains without double or triple wrapping. So like this one sentence had a lot of details because it has Portal, it has Wormhole's definition. And yeah, but if you read carefully, this is the difference between Wormhole and Portal as well, right? But yeah, the second one, they talk about Wormhole's guardians. So Wormhole relies on 19 guardians that together they monitor the state of several blockchains that Wormhole connects. And they're basically responsible for observing and signing messages so that Wormhole network can operate safely and efficiently. So Wormhole talks about how these guardians are some of the largest and most highly respected validators across several blockchain ecosystems. And I think they will talk more about each of these guardians in detail in the future. But overall, I think it's very important for bridges to educate the public about the architecture and how they work. So I really appreciate like these threads from the Wormhole team, right? Because like most, not all of us will go dig deeper into white papers where you can write a lot and still not come to the point. But threads and tweets are a way to just make it simple for the regular user to understand. So I think with this thread, at least all of Wormhole users who are active on Twitter would now know, okay, there is something called a guardian that's responsible for moving my funds across chain, right? So it's great to see such threads. And yeah, so next up we have an article from the Consensus team, and this talks about what L222 means for the Ethereum ecosystem. And I think it's a great article because it covers some major trends that we'll be seeing in 2022. And these trends include bridges, fee reduction, the merge, and developer migration across the ecosystem. All of these trends are like very interesting, especially for us at LI.FI, because we're helping push forward at least one of these narratives very closely. So yes, a very detailed article about L222 and what it means for the ecosystem.
Yep. And speaking of Ethereum, really, I hear August is the latest date.
Are we gonna do this again to ourselves?
Yes, I am. I think I said like 2 podcasts ago that I'll never believe the Ethereum Foundation if they give me a date, and then like I read August today, and I'm like, it's happening in August. I'm ready.
Now there'll be that entire build up towards August. Everyone will make their goals of like, okay, I want to have X amount of ETH before the merge, and then the developers will nicely give us more time to stack more ETH.
Yep. Well, speaking about something that I have, which is zero knowledge, what's the next content recommendation you have?
So yeah, so basically it's a podcast recommendation for this week. One that was hosted on Zero Knowledge podcast with Anna Rose and James Prestwich from the Nomad team. So they talk about building optimistic bridges and how Nomad was developed, their previous experiences, and how it kind of shaped Nomad's architecture, I would say. So I think this is a very interesting point, right? And I brought this up earlier a few weeks ago in one of my polls that I wanted to conduct, and it was that so all these teams, they have these builders, right, who have previous experiences, and there's a certain way all of them think, and I think their experiences kind of shapes how a bridge architecture is made, or what values the bridge is constructed, right? And you can kind of see the future roadmap as well. So if you see Connext, their team, they've been researchers of like L2's scalability, and their approach is always around like Ethereum's ethos of scalability and interop. So I think it's a very interesting thing, and it's still in my head, but I think that kind of makes sense.
Beautiful. Sorry, I was trying to think of something witty to say to the end of it, and I couldn't come up with anything, so I went beautiful. We'll see.
Yeah,
I guess maybe I'll get kicked off the podcast next week.
Let's move on to your recommendation.
Yep. Okay. So the first recommended read that I have for you is the LI.FI Deep Dive into Harmony, which just gives you a couple different dApps that you can go try out with our bridge to Harmony. So go check out DeFi Kingdoms, right? Go take out a loan on Tranquil. I think you'll really find that Harmony is a vibrant community. I also want to give out a shout out to Jonas, who wrote the article. I'm just the editor, even though my name's on the piece.
I wonder if Jonas thinks the same way about the Harmony ecosystem.
Oh, he loves DeFi Kingdoms. He is like, word to the wise for everyone who listens to this podcast. He's definitely going to come out with maybe a different kind of version of a LI.FI podcast that walks you through how to do, degenerate things, and DeFi kingdoms will maybe be highlighted. Anyways, on to the next section of this pod. Actually, we have one more recommended read. I miscounted my tabs over here. But if you're over here and you've listened to this whole podcast and you're like, I actually have no idea what the heck a cross-chain bridge is, this whole metaverse thing is blowing my mind. What is a bridge? How do bridges work? How can I formulate like a concept of what a bridge is? We have the article for you. It's the dangers, present, and future of cross-chain communication, what to do after layer 0. I'm not going to dive crazy deep into this article, but if you want the TLDR on bridges security, and how you should like rank bridges in your mind, go check this out. And so, as for the last section of the pod, Arjun, what's on your mind going into next week?
Not next week, but last week I was thinking about like finding good data on bridges, like any dashboard tools or like even raw data. I think there's a gap right now with respect to data on bridges, and we currently don't have a few go-to sources to find this data. I think, and the conventional data websites like Dune, DeFi, Llama, L2Bits, they do have some data, but it's quite limited right now, and it's very difficult to track this data because it's happening across so many different chains, right? Like DeFi data earlier, it was limited to one chain, and so you could go deeper into like analyzing everything. But because this is happening across like 50 plus chains, it's very difficult to see the long tail effect of like, okay, if an asset is bridged from one chain, where does it go? Which application gets the TVL? But yeah, I think in the future, hopefully more teams are building towards better data dashboards for bridges. And I'm, of course, really looking forward to an analytics hub for bridges.
Yeah, I'm with you. The bridging space needs analytics. I mean, I'm currently writing a deep dive on Avalanche Bridge, the native bridge for Avalanche, and you literally type into Google if you're listening to this, Avalanche Bridge TVL. There's no good statistics for this, right? No one is really keeping track of this stuff, and it's pretty hard because you're moving assets across chains. So like it's harder to actually query data because you're working with two different internets essentially. So need that. And if anyone has Avalanche Bridge TVL statistics, hit me up, please, because I'm trying to write this article. Last thing that's on my mind, I'm kind of trying to formulate a thesis right now. And when I'm formulating a thesis, it's never a good idea because, I'm a small brain. But I'm thinking about the idea of crypto wallets and how that is kind of a misnomer, because a crypto wallet really isn't a wallet. It's actually a set of keys, right, that unlock your address on a certain blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. I'm also thinking that the term blockchain bridge, I think we've created a new misnomer, because a lot of times these aren't really like bridges. It's more of like a, bank that moves your assets from blockchain A to blockchain B. But we call it a bridge, which makes you seem to think like you can just drive over by yourself and like you're all good and you're in control of your assets the whole time. Whereas, in fact, I think there might be a third party oftentimes. And so I'm just trying to think about different ways to describe that to people. And that's what's on my mind this week. Do you have anything to add there?
It makes sense, but that's where the differentiation between all these bridges also comes in, right? Like not all bridges are built the same. So if you have to explain what bridges does, like what are the functions of a bridge, the bank example or the analogy would work, right? Like I think I've also used the same analogy somewhere, and it works because it explains everything in a simple way. But if you actually go deeper into the nuances of each bridge architecture, you'll see that that's actually not the case, and that's how the real like bridges on the trust minimize side actually differentiate themselves. So it's true, but that's where the alpha is, I guess.
Definitely. And that's too much of a sweeping statement I'm making. I just find it very difficult to like explain to normal people what's going on, because you say crypto wallet and people, they imagine they're like physical wallet, right? They think that's how a crypto wallet's supposed to work. It's not really what's happening. Same thing. I think we're kind of doing the same thing with bridges. So I'm just thinking about it. It's percolating. My thoughts are spinning.
Yeah, and I think yesterday only you told me about this and just basically told me to write it.
Yeah, you do need to write it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add?
No.
You're done?
I mean, there's so much to add, but then you can't talk about everything. And that's also kind of a problem, right? Because then some people think that you're doing that on purpose, but it's like you have to keep it concise.
Interesting. We'll end it with that note. And that is the latest episode of the Cross Chain Insider. Again, go check out our Substack and subscribe if you want this in email form. Arjun writes this every week. He does a great job. I'm always informed by it. You'll be informed by it. Or you can listen to the pod. Either way works. You should also check out LI.FI. We're building the ultimate cross-chain money Lego. We're a bridge and DEX aggregator, allowing users to swap assets from any chain to any chain, just a couple clicks. You can also check us out on Twitter at LI.FI Protocol, and you can find our link to our Discord there. We're a good hang. Thanks for listening.